Hello, Rob. We're back with Cawdor by Robinson Jeffers, a 120-page poem, narrative poem. 4. A sudden rainstorm beat in from the North Ocean, up a blue heaven, and spoiled his hunting. The northwest wind veered east. Oh, rip that page. The rain came harder, in heavy falls and electric pauses. Hood had come home. He sat with Michael playing checkers. Farah was upstairs with her father. The blind man had grown feebler. He had been, in fact, dying since the fire, but now 2 days he had eaten nothing, and his lungs clogged. Most of the daytime and half the night Farah spent by his bedside. He had lain deeply absorbed in his own misery, his blindness concentrating his mood until the electric streams and hushes of the rain vexed him. Toward evening he fell into feverish talk of trivial remembered things, little dead pleasures. Farah gave patient answers until he slept. She then left him and slept heavily beside her husband. The rain had ceased. Hood saw a star from his window and thought if the rain ceased he might give over his hunting and go tomorrow. But out of doors was little promise of the rain ceasing. The east wind had slipped south. The earth lay expectant. The house wore an iron stub for some forgotten purpose, fixed upward from the peak of the roof. To one passing outdoors at midnight, the invisible metal would have shown a speared flame before the thunder began. Farah, before the first thunderclap, dreaming, imagined herself the mountain lion that had killed the dog. She hid in leaves, and the hunter aimed at her body through a gap in the green. She waited, the fire rigid, and through closed lids saw lightning flare in the window. She heard the crash of the rifle, the enthralling dream so well interpreted, the flash and the noise that she was not awakened but slept to the second thunder. She rose then and went to her father's room, for he'd be awakened. He was not awakened. He snored in a new manner, puffing his cheeks. Impossible to wake him. She called Cawdor. In the morning they sent a canna, for form's sake, not hopes, to fetch a doctor. Hood offered to ride. A canna was sent. The torrents of rain prevented his return and the doctor's coming to the third day. But northward he rode lightly, the storm behind him. The wind had shifted before dawn and grooved itself, a violent channel from east of south. The slant of the coast, the house roof groaned, the planted cypresses flung broken boughs over the gables, and all the lee slope of the gorge was carpeted green with the new growth and little twigs of the redwoods. They bowed themselves at last, the redwoods, not shaken by common storms, bowed themselves over. Their voice, and not the ocean's, was the great throat of the gorge that roared at full, taking all the storm's other noises like little fish in a net. On the open pasture, the cattle began to drift. The wind broke fences, but Cawdor, although unsure and thence in his times violent toward human nature, was never taken asleep by the acts of nature outside. He knew his hills as if he had nerves under the grass. What fence lengths would blow down and toward what cover the cattle would drift. He rode with George, and Hood rode after, thwart the current in the cracked oaks to the open mercy of the hill. They felt the spray and sharp wreckage of rain clouds in the steel wind, and saw the legs of the others' horses leaning like the legs of broken chairs on the domed rims on the running sky. In the house, Farah sat by her father's bed, still as a stone, and heard him breathe. That was the master noise of the house that caught the storm's noises and cries in a net, and captured her mind. The ruling tenth of her mind, caught in the tidal rhythm, lay inert and breathing like the old man's body, the deep layers left unruled, dividing life in a dream. She heard not the roof crying in the wind, nor on the window the endless rattle of earth and pebbles blasted from the hill above. For hours, and a broken cypress bough rose and tapped the strained glass. At a touch the pane exploded inward, glass flew like sparks. The fury of the wind entered like a wild beast. Nothing in the room remained unmoved except the old man on the bed. Michael Cawdor had crawled up the hill 4 foot to weight her eagle's cage with heavier stones against the storm, and creeping back to the house, heard the glass crash and saw the gapped window. She got upstairs and saw in the eddying and half-blinded glimmer Farah's face like an axe, and the window blocked with a high wardrobe that had hidden the wall between the two windows, a weight for men to strain at. But Farah, whose nerves found action before her mind found thought, had wrestled it into service instead of screaming the instant the crash snapped her. Deep trance. When Michael came, Farah was drawing the table against the wardrobe to hold it firm, her back and shoulders flowing into lines like fire between the axe face and the stretched arms. Shut the door, she said, panting. Did Hood go with them? He hasn't gone? Who, Hood? Coo, if you like. Has he gone? He went with father, she answered, trembling, to herd the cows. Why are your eyes like eggs, then? For he'll come back, Michael. She went to the bedside and murmured, He hasn't moved. It hasn't hurt him. But, Michael, did you want Hood? Want him? I wanted someone to stop the window. Who could bear life if it refused the one thing you want? I've made a shutter to hold although it sings at the edges. Yet he felt nothing. Michael, it doesn't storm for a sparrow's death. You and I, Michael, won't have a stir like this to speed us away in our time. He is dying. Michael answered, Dante's Vitello's roping the haystacks. I'll fetch him, Farah. What could he do while the wind continues? More than I've done? We can stand draughts. Oh, Michael, a man's life and his soul have nothing in common. You never knew my father. He had eagle imaginations, this poor scarred face for whose sake neither nature nor man has ever stepped from the path while he was living. His death breaks trees. They send a roaring chariot of storm to home him. Hood wouldn't leave without his rifle, she said. He didn't take the rifle when he went up? Why, no, not in this wind. In the afternoon, the wind fell, and the spray in the wind waxed into rain. The men came home. They boarded the broken window. The rain increased all night. At dawn, a high seabird, if any had risen so high, watching the hoary light creep down the sea under the cloud streams, down the many canyons, the great sea wall of coast is notched with, like a murderer's gun stock, would have seen each canyon's creek mouth smoke its mud-brown torrent into the shoring gray, and as the light gained, have seen the whole wall gleam with a glaze of water. And there's section 4, part 4 of Cawdor. Goodbye, bruv. Goodbye.